So a lot of questions surrounding what's going to happen. To add some insight into this and outlook for energy prices, I'm joined by Remi Piet. He is the senior partner at the consulting firm Ambali Advisory. Good to see you again. Thanks for coming back. We certainly appreciate it.
A pleasure to be with you, Sean.
I want to begin by just talking about the price cap on Russian oil that has gone into effect. What is it meant to do? Because I think people all around the world have heard for the better part of a year that there is a very harsh embargo toward Russia. Why is today's action any different?
Yes, I mean, it will not have any actions or consequences on the situation in Europe because there's going to be a ban on Russian oil. So as a result, obviously decreasing the prices doesn't change anything for the situation in Europe. However, what it means is that Russia will not be able to export oil at above $60, sorry, if it uses any kind of cargo or insurance that has been emitted by Western companies. And that's the case in most exports around the world, whether you're using Greek cargoes or English insurance systems such as Lloyd's or others. And so that means that the Russian will not be able to use the traditional ways of exporting oil using, without having to sell its oil at $60 and not above.
Well, we heard in that very fine story leading into you that obviously this is meant to punish Russia, to make its profit margin go down and down and down. But Russia is going to do everything it can to work around this. Some of those measures using older fleets, mixing some of their oil, do you think this is going to be an effective way?
It's not going to be enough. First of all, you have some limitation in the capacity to export oil. I mean, as I said, there's very limited other options, in terms of being able to use cargo tankers or others that are not from European countries or the US. The capacity of being able to sell oil at higher prices than the actual imposed sanctions is not going to be possible, in the sense that if you're India, if you're China, what's the point of trying to purchase oil at a higher price when you actually have in your hands the capacity to bargain for a lower price of the oil? So it's very likely that Russia will not be able to use other ways than selling it at $60. And again, there's also a series of technical difficulties and old fleet that might not be well equipped to be able to export oil the way to keep markets such as China.
Oh, Remi, how have these types of measures affected Russia so far? Have they been very effective?
So far, we've seen a very high price in oil. I mean, the reason why the OPEC Plus, for example, has decided not to increase production is that oil prices used to be traded around $100. Now they're in the low 80s. And so when oil was traded at $100, obviously there was a very positive situation for Russia to be able to finance its war effort in Ukraine. It has tapped into its reserves, but that was obviously very positive in terms of the increase of oil prices for its economy. When you're looking today at very lower price in the oil markets, and especially the sanctions that will decrease exports from Russia to $60, it's going to be much harder for Vladimir Putin to be able to finance his war efforts, and it's likely that we're going to see serious economic difficulties for Russia in the next few months.
I think a lot of people are wondering what the caps are going to mean, the sanctions going to mean to Ukraine and other nations that have been dependent on Russian oil for energy.
I mean, very true. And first of all, we're talking only about oil. Then there's another, larger chunk, which is natural gas. What you're looking in terms of being able to offset, decreased export from Russia following the ban, you're looking at other exporters of oil. And that's why you have a series of new agreements with the United States, for example, with countries from the Gulf that are looking at potentially offsetting those exports from Russia. The problem that you're having is very different from one country to the other. Some countries like France have been able to, replenish their natural gas and oil reserves before the winter. Others are much more dependent on exports from Russia, such as Germany, for example, or the Baltic states. But at the end of the day, what you're looking at today is that you have an economic situation globally that is not very positive, that has really pushed down the price of oil internationally. There still has a series of issues in domestic market, and the electricity is still very high for different reasons in the European market. But it's looking like maybe that European countries will be able to pass the winter, and that Russia will not be able to dig into high prices of oil to be able to finance this conflict.
Let's talk about OPEC nations, because Saudi Arabia certainly has not been extraordinarily kind to the United States recently in its oil decisions. A lot of controversy there. How do you think this decision is going to affect OPEC nations? Is this a chance for them to make more money? Could they possibly put more oil, not natural gas, into the market to help nations as the harsh winter approaches?
So yeah, clearly Saudi Arabia is a big player here, and the fact that you're looking at the decision of not increasing oil prices is not favorable to the United States or to Europe. But again, without this conflict, that would be the normal trend in terms of this reunion of this meeting from the OPEC Plus, simply because the ongoing economic situation is looking dire today, with the Chinese economy slowing down and others around the world. And so as a result, the kind of push down on prices from $100 I was saying to low 80s would actually have warranted indeed a decrease of production also. But here you're looking at, as I was saying, attempts at trying to bridge the energy security gap. There are other players out there, Qatar, Azerbaijan, Nigeria, Algeria in terms of natural gas. In terms of oil, it's slightly more complex because production limits for Angola or for Nigeria actually are hardly reached by those countries. And Saudi Arabia right now is actually looking at, that's actually a very positive news for Saudi Arabia, to try to increase the prices by decreasing the production, and at the same time looking at a key competitor like Russia not being able to benefit from those oil prices. So you will see oil prices increase following this decision by OPEC Plus, probably not to the level of $100 a barrel. It will be positive for net producers such as the US or Saudi Arabia, for example. It will not be positive for Russia because they are limited by this cap on their barrel.
Well, Remi, we know that Russia has promised retaliation against the United States. This story is not going away. We hope to have you back soon. Our thanks again to Remi Piet of Ambali Advisory for joining us. Thank you again, Remi.